I'm going to share with you the 5 things that I did to achieve my goal weight and my goal physique, and what to do when you tried everything else and the weight is not coming off. I'm not a medical professional. This is not medical advice. This is for informational purposes only, based on my personal experience on what I have done that works for me and the knowledge that I've gained through a lot of trial and error and my own research. I've lost over 30 pounds in the last several years. I'll put some before and after pictures in this video so you can see the change. I am back to my high school weight. I'm actually back to my weight and physique even better than when I won the Miss America 2007 swimsuit award because of the changes that I've made that I'm going to share with you. I also have a lot of knowledge in this area. I have a nutrition certificate. I've taken a lot of college level courses and read a lot of books by respected doctors and authors. I'm sharing this now because I've started a venture recently called Freedom Through Truth, where my goal is to share life lessons learned and experience that I've had in making changes, but especially difficult changes, and how we can do that by really looking at the truth of situations and the freedom that comes through doing so. Now, because I'm not an expert, or even so, I still want to know if you know more or know better. Please put that in the comments. Share your knowledge, cite your sources, so that I and anybody else who's watching this video can continue to further our knowledge. We can learn together and continue to make life-changing choices for the better together. Now, I am doing this video at a high level because I'd like to keep it short. I will do detailed videos on the topics that I cover, so please subscribe if you want to be notified when those come out. I do reference my notes because I have a lot that I want to cover. I can't keep it all in my head, and I want to make sure that I don't miss any important points. The first thing that I did to lose this weight was check my nutrition. The reason why this is number 1 is because even if this is the only thing that you address, you will be able to lose weight by fixing your nutrition. I used to think that exercise mattered more than what we eat. I came to find out through experience, through study, that it's actually the opposite, and I've also seen this to be very true in other people's lives. You've got to start with knowing how much food, how much energy your body needs compared to what you are actually intaking. And I don't mean estimating or eyeballing how much food that you are eating, because that is just an easy way to lie to ourselves. We've got to actually measure or weigh the food that we're eating to know the number of calories. First, though, you need to know how much you need. I just went online, found a calculator, a calorie calculator through a Google search. You can do the same, but I'll put the link to the one that I used in the description. And I just started with the base of what does my body need to just be a body. Now, you do want a calorie deficit, obviously, if you want to lose weight, but I think you will be very surprised by how much you're eating compared to what you actually need. And if you just cut it to what you need on a regular basis, you're gonna see the weight fall off if there's a big difference there. I like this approach too because this is more sustainable. This is the calories that your body actually needs versus doing this huge cut, this huge deficit, and then wanting to add those calories back later. It's risky for gaining the weight back. Now, what to eat? I will cover this in a lot more detail in a separate video, but for now, I'll just tell you, I do mostly carbohydrates, followed by protein, followed by fat. I like to have a balanced plate with a good fruit, a good vegetable, a whole grain, and a good source of fat and protein. I am eating a lot more protein now because I'm working out so much, and I do see the difference in the muscle that I'm gaining. But the reason why I focus on those fruits and vegetables and those whole grains is because there are so many vitamins and minerals and quality energy in that type of food. Now, I'm not a perfect eater. I'm not eating whole foods and only healthy foods. I do about half probably good healthy foods, and then the other half I'm still in that processed world, so I'm a work in progress too. The second thing that I did is I cut out sugar. This was very difficult. This was painful, and it took me a long time to do. I used to eat thousands and thousands, I am not exaggerating, calories of sugar and junk food on a regular basis, almost daily basis. But then it got to the point where the misery of trying to keep that in my life was worse than any sort of comfort or fun or release or soothing that I thought that food was bringing me. I realized this on a trip that I took that was somewhat of a dream trip. I was pursuing a childhood dream of mine where it was ruined because of what was going on in here with my thoughts about food and my obsession about it. It ruined the entire trip because I couldn't find a way to eat the way I wanted to that worked based on the reality of just plain old biology. I couldn't find a way to eat the binge foods and all the sugar that I wanted, but still feel good physically, mentally, and emotionally, go figure, and also have good relationships, because the way I ate got in the way of having good relationships and just being present in life. I couldn't find a way to have all those things that I wanted in life while also eating the way I was, especially when it came to sugar. So I got to a point where I looked at what the facts were, what all the options actually were in my life, and they were all completely miserable, including cutting out sugar, even though I knew in my heart that that was the thing that I needed to do. I remember even journaling about this and writing out those options, but I couldn't write that last one. I couldn't even put it on paper because of how hard it was for me to accept that truth. I'll share a little bit later more on how I did this, but especially in the detailed videos, but a support group and program was huge for me in being able to do this and maintain it. The third thing I did was find sugar replacements that I actually enjoyed. I read this book called I Quit Sugar by Sarah Wilson. She introduced me to 2 sugar replacements that obviously have been around for a long time, or I should say been popular for a long time. I just hadn't tried them. One is monk fruit sweetener and the other is, of course, stevia. But just even being able to put that kind of stuff in my coffee did help me maintain this change of getting sugar out of my life for the long term. There's also a lot of great recipes in that book. Like I make almond cookies, lemon cupcakes. There's another book I'm going to reference later called How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. Great recipes in the book. One of them is for ice cream. You make it with frozen bananas, milk, and you can put matcha powder or cocoa powder in it, and you got a chocolate shake. I love it. I still do the synthetic sweeteners, even though I know I'd like to at least decrease those or try to get those out of my life, but for now, they work quite well for me. So I do love my diet sodas. I love the aspartame. I love the sugar alcohols. The sugar alcohols, they're a little risky because they can wreak havoc on the stomach and digestive system if we eat too much of those. But if I eat those in moderation, they're a great replacement for sugar for me, again, for now, with where I'm at in my journey. The fourth thing that I did to achieve my goal weight and goal physique, exercise. If you want that physique, you are going to have to do this. It also helps with sagging skin that happens when we lose weight as we age. But if the thought of working out makes you sick, don't worry about it. You will lose weight just by getting your nutrition right. Exercise has a lot of health benefits and it does help with the calorie deficit if you're working out hard, but you may not be there yet. But if you can find activities that you love, all the better. Make it fun. Do social sports like tennis, golf, pickleball. Make it easier on yourself like swimming, less impact. Make it productive and or fun. So watch TV, listen to audiobooks, do your work while you're walking on a treadmill, take your dog on a walk. But it is important that you start slow, especially with activities like running, for example. That's one thing that I took up. Very surprising to me, but I love it now. But I started with a mile and a very, very slow mile. And now I'm training for a half marathon and I actually love it. And I've got bad knees. So I had to do a lot of work. I had to go very slowly to be able to run. I also do weight training. I started with doing 5 push-ups on my knees. Now I'm doing 20 regular push-ups and 21 armed push-ups on my knees. You will be amazed if you stay consistent and don't give up. I used to have bat wings that drooped 3 inches down. Now I can actually see my triceps when I flex them. But do start slow because you don't want to injure yourself and put yourself that much farther backwards. Finally, and most importantly, I had to address what was going on in here, and in my soul, and whatever this void was inside me that I was trying to eat to fill. So 2 things I did for that. I had to learn how to change my mind, and I also got involved in a support group. So when it came to changing my mind, there's 2 videos I'm going to put in the description. One is based on Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. I do think it's AI generated, but the information is legit because I've read his books, so I recognize the information. There's also one by Karina Alexandria, and I did this approach for just a few days and it really worked. Luckily, I found it right at the beginning of getting sugar out of my life. Huge change for me. It's also great because it's based on a similar approach that I did when I was a lot younger in other areas of my life, with a book called The New Psycho-Cybernetics, and that is by Maxwell Maltz. But this is all about taking what's going through our head right now and asking ourselves, is this true? And if it's not, replacing it with what is true about the situation. Or if the information is true but we don't want it to be so, what do we want to be true about our lives? And replacing that information with the goal of how we want to think. This was very important to me because I realized there was some serious conditioning, serious neural pathways laid that were affecting how I ate and how I thought about life and food. I realized that I had been thinking since I was young that life was hard and painful and sad and miserable, and the only thing that made it worth it was being able to binge eat at the end of the day as a reward. Once I realized that, I started thinking about, is this true? And do I want it to be true for my life? Is that the kind of life that I want? I'm still working through that because it's conditioning since I was very, very young. So it's going to take me some time. Those changes don't happen quickly. I'm also still working on looking at the comfort and the release and the fun and the escape that food brings me. And of course, binge eating, that's still hanging out at my doorstep, ready for me to let it in at any time. So considering that I'm still working on all these changes, and they're going to be lifelong as I continue to improve in this area, I do have a support group. And if you'd like recommendations for that, you can reach out to me privately. For those who have tried everything else, including all the things that I just talked about, and still cannot get the weight off, I want to talk about hormone issues, because the standard American diet can get our hormones all kinds of out of whack and make it very difficult to lose weight. I'm going to go through this slowly and rely on my notes even more so, because I want to make sure I get it right. It's complicated, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible for myself to understand it and to be able to explain it in a video. The 2 sources I use mostly here are a book called Fat Chance by Dr. Robert Lustig and a book called How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. So first, most of us are aware that if we eat more calories than we use, that energy gets stored as fat. What I did not know is that fat is actually what's making it harder for insulin to do its job, insulin being responsible for getting that energy, glucose, out of our blood and into our cells for use, and that insulin is also the fat storage hormone. So if sugar isn't getting out of our blood and into our cells to be used because fat that we have stored is preventing insulin from doing what it's supposed to do or from not working as well, the body responds to this challenge by producing more insulin. So now we are producing more of what is responsible for storing fat. We can't get the glucose out of our blood and into our cells. And if we're eating too much, there is a whole lot of fat storage going on. And this isn't just for diabetics. This is the process that starts once we start to gain fat by eating too many calories and then continuing to do so. So even some of the energy that you need isn't being converted into energy that you use, but to fat because of that issue and that cycle I just explained. And if we continue to eat more than we use, especially if this is in the form of fat and refined and excess sugars, the body is now in this vicious cycle of storing fat. And there's more to it of how this affects other hormones in your body. It's not just insulin, but that makes it also hard to lose weight. And it even triggers the addictive cycle in our brain. So it affects some other hormones in our brains that just create this vicious spiral. But for the purposes of this video discussion, I'll close with this. Yes, we are responsible for what we eat, and when we eat too much, we gain weight. However, the standard, typical American diet that has been taught to us to be normal is a huge part of why we eat too much, and we eat too much of the stuff that is making us sick and keeping us overweight. I do have a lot more to say on these topics, so please watch those detailed videos, subscribe to be notified for when those come out, and join the conversation, and let's continue to get better together.